Hey guys, welcome back to the studio. I think one of the things I get asked about the most when it comes to learning to play jazz on the guitar is how to play more interesting stuff as an accompanist. Sure, you should of course know all the standard voicings from shell style to all the various drop voicings and beyond, but that still leaves you playing accompaniment that sounds kind of stagnant and grip-based. One of the things that's helped me the most in breaking out of the grip-oriented approach to comping was learning how to effectively use Barry Harris's famous 6 diminished concept over various chord progressions and movements. Today, we're going to go over 2 of his scales as chords and how I use them to substitute different chord movements. Then we're going to learn some examples on some common chord progressions, and finally, we'll wrap it all up by going through a standard tune using everything we've learned. You guys ready? Let's get started. Barry Harris was an absolute titan of a pianist and a jazz educator, and his 6 diminished concept is an incredibly deep well of material. Today, we're just going to discuss how the concept can be applied to providing a more movement-based approach to playing accompaniment. This is not going to be an incredibly comprehensive look into the concept, otherwise we'd be here all day. Just in case you're not familiar with the basic idea behind it though, allow me to explain. Barry says that we need to be movement players and not just play static 2 to 5 chords. To this end, he devised a scale that's essentially made up of 2 chords, a major 6, in this case we'll use C, and a diminished chord a half step below the root. When we combine the notes of these 2 chords into a scale, we get this. Now at first blush, this kind of just sounds like a major bebop scale, but it's actually a little deeper than that. See, when we play the scale out as chords like this, what we get is inversions of the tonic and its dominant, rather than 7 unique different chords. It also contains the relative minor and its dominant as well. This is super useful to us as improvisers and accompanists because it means that the scale of chords can function over larger movements of chords instead of just 1. There are actually 4 different variations on this scale too. The major 6 diminished, minor 6 diminished, dominant 7 diminished, and the dominant 7 flat 5 diminished. Today, we're just going to focus on the first 2 and how we can apply them to our comping in a way that emphasizes movement. Now let's check out how to play these 2 scales as chords. I'll show you both major 6 and minor 6 diminished on the top 4 strings and the inner 4 strings using drop 2 style voicings. There's a lot of other ways to voice these chords though, so let me know down in the comments if you'd like me to teach you all the other possible voicing styles as well. Here's C major 6 diminished up first. Now let's apply that same method to the minor 6 diminished. All we really need to do is flat the 3rd on each major 6 chord and voila! We have the scale that alternates between the tonic as a minor 6 chord and its dominant, as well as the relative minor, although as a half diminished chord in this case, and its dominant as well. Here, check that out. You probably noticed that we don't really get a major 7 chord as part of this concept. There's lots of ways to get the sound of a major 7th or a major 9 using this concept through some clever substitution, but we can also utilize what Barry calls borrowing and turn our first major 6 chord into a major 7 by borrowing a note from the diminished above, like this. See, the diminished chord above the root is a D diminished. and that contains the note B. If I replace the sixth in my C6 chord with that B, I get this standard C major 7 grip that you're probably pretty familiar with. Here's where things get a bit more interesting though. If I take that new chord through the 6 diminished scale and I keep that note borrowed from above on every chord, I get some really interesting sounding voicings. Here's what that sounds like. There's lots more to the borrowing concept than this, of course. We can borrow notes and then return them to our original position, resulting in some really beautiful movement that works in the same contexts as the original scale chords. Check out what that sounds like. I hope you're starting to get what I mean when I say that this concept presents us with a hugely deep well to pull from. There are so many possibilities for movement and voice leading contained within just this one scale. These are just some top-level ideas to give you an overview of how the concept functions, though. Next, let's check out how we can use the 6 diminished scales as chords to make some common chord progressions sound just a little bit more interesting. Because the guitar is so much more limited than, say, a piano, we have to get familiar with using substitutions for chords in order to achieve a lusher sound to our harmonic playing. The 6 diminished concept gives us even more opportunities to do this. Unlike our normal substituted chord voicings, though, we can do this with movement rather than just static chords. In one of his iconic masterclasses, Barry talks about the concept he calls 6 on the 5th. And what he means by that is that we can play a 6 diminished scale off the 5th of a chord that we're playing over, and it'll give us some really nice substituted voicings. Check out how we can use the G major 6 diminished scale over C major 7, and that'll give us the sound of C major 9th. This works in a similar fashion when it comes to minor 7 chords as well. However, rather than being off the 5th, the minor 7 is inherently part of the major 6 diminished scale. For example, if I use F6 diminished, I can substitute it for a D minor 7 chord. Check out the beautiful movement that that creates. When it comes to dominant chords, we have two main options that I think work best. The first is 6 on the 5th. Just like with the major 7 example, this substitution gives us the sound of a dominant 9th. Let's use D minor 6 diminished over a static G7 chord, see how that creates the sound of a G9. If it's more tension we're after, then we can use minor 6 diminished a half step above the root. This is going to give us the sound of a dominant flat 13, flat 9 chord. Let's use A flat minor 6 diminished to create that sound over a static G7 chord. Now let's see how we can make use of these concepts over some typical chord progressions. I think it's pretty safe to say that anybody who's studied jazz in any capacity knows that the 2-5-1 is kind of our bread and butter. Like I said at the outset of this video though, Barry says that we need to be movement players. Here's a few examples of that idea in action over a 2-5 in C major. See if you can spot the different concepts that we talked about in the previous sections. There's a little bit of everything in all of these. Check them out. This, of course, also works over longer chord progressions like the 3-6-2-5. We also don't always need to be so busy with our comp. Sometimes simple movement is best. Here's an example to show you what I mean. Finally, let's go through a whole standard tune using these ideas to see what they sound like in context. I'll use Blue Bossa for this example, since it's a short form and it kind of has a reputation of being a little bit uninteresting. But using the comping ideas we got from Barry Harris, we can do some really cool stuff on this tune, or really any other tune for that matter. Check out what it sounds like. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. I hope you've been able to learn some new ideas for how to improve your chord comping. I know in my case, it took a long time from first learning about Barry Harris's concept and being able to play through all the different scales to actually being able to utilize it in my comping and improvisations. Like I keep saying though, this is an incredibly deep well, and what I've given up here is just the tip of the iceberg. Did the stuff that I talked about here give you any better insight into how to use the 6 diminished concept? If it did, leave a comment down below and let me know about it. I'll be covering more about this concept in future episodes, but let me know if there's anything specific you'd like me to go over here. We're getting really close to 1,000 subs here at the studio, so make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, make sure to like the video and hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss an upload. As always, I want to give a shout out to my amazing patrons over on Patreon for their continued support. Those amazing people are PH, Trent Taylor, Cedric, Damon, Josh, Paulette Christopher, and David Zuckerbraun. An extra special thanks goes out to Jazz Luminaire patron Vibhav Babadi. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for your continued support. In case you haven't checked it out yet and are on the fence, all the written content from every video on the channel is available over at my Patreon page, along with monthly bonuses for patrons only. Head on over there and join the studio. Thank you to all of you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.